Hello and welcome to episode 18 of Checkpoint Radio. My name is James and I'm with Ben and Connor as always. And in today's episode, we're opening the Hall of Fame once more for a brand new entry. And trust me, this one is well deserving of a spot on our greatest games of all time list. But before that, there's another game I want to talk about. A very new game that recently just come out. Alan Wake 2.
Oh my
God.
goodness.
Why is this game so good?
I mean, to be honest, I would be very happy if we put Alan Wake 2 in this Game of the Year thing that we do right now, because this game is top tier. Hits every box for me so far.
It's strange because I never played Alan Wake 1, but I did play a bit of Quantum Break and obviously a bit of Control as well. But Remedy are a kind of a, not a strange studio, but they're a studio that have been slowly building out a really kind of eye-catching, solid, well-executed portfolio with the games that they've produced over the last few years. And I think Alan Wake 2, everyone's talking about this game at the moment. It's just been so well received by fans and critics. It's doing exceptionally well in sales. Everyone's absolutely loving it. It's a great kind of horror, psychological thriller, survival experience. But I'm stunned by the movie-like quality of this game, the super high production value. Even though I don't actually think the game had a massive budget.
I'm not sure. I think it maybe did.
They did the same with Control. I think that game cost like $50 million to make.
Oh, really?
Yeah, or like 25, something like that.
But you know, it's a game that if it has had a budget that's maybe in that region, every penny has been spent in the most perfect way.
Yeah.
Like Control was an absolutely gorgeous game, and the style and setting of it really set the standard. Alan Wake 2's just built on that and took it to the next level. So I recently went back and played Alan Wake 1 in preparation for Alan Wake 2. And to be honest, I was a bit tight financially this month, so I was like, oh, maybe I'll get Alan Wake 2 at a later date when, I don't know, I can afford it and treat myself to it. But when you, James, sent me a list of tweets from people who'd reviewed the games, and it was getting across the board 9, 10s and 5 out of 5s, it was like a no-brainer. You have to buy this game right now. And I absolutely loved it. I really enjoyed Alan Wake 1. I played the remaster. I never played it before. And I love the fact that I did play it because obviously it's a complete continuation and it carries on from pretty much where Alan Wake 1 left off. Playing Control in between, I don't know, I am in love with the whole Remedy cinematic universe, and I think
the RCU, the Remedy connected universe,
it's just so good. And I think Control did an incredible job at setting that making it a reality, because Alan Wake 1 was at first obviously its own isolated thing, but then Control coming along and then interpreting it into this whole universe of altered world events, AWEs, and the lake, without too many spoilers, but I don't want to spoil it too much, but obviously Alan Wake 2...
This is in reference to Alan Wake 1 with the lake being not exactly a lake and being like, you know, a gateway to what is potentially now other sort of worldly events and stuff. And Alan Wake 2 just picks up directly from the events of Alan Wake 1, more or less, with a new string of murders that have called in this hotshot FBI agent to come and investigate. And I just can't help but, like, it's weird because when I'm playing it, like, I know it's obviously a game, but I feel like I'm really experiencing a great piece of, like, just a great movie or TV series or something, because it's so well executed in terms of its, like, storytelling and its characters and its writing as well. And it's just a real sort of, like, just shining example of how video games can sort of bridge that gap towards movies and TV shows and be just a complete work of art that elevates games to, like, a new level. Like, this is where we can take storytelling in games, everything from how the gameplay influences that to literally the cutscenes and cinematography and things as well.
You know it. I mean, isn't it a shame that there are going to be millions upon millions of people who are never going to experience this? Because obviously, unless you're a gamer, you are never going to experience Alan Wake 2. And the difference between watching a game and playing a game, especially when it's a horror game. Obviously, we discussed this in a previous episode, the difference between playing a horror game and just watching a horror film or watching a horror game. Like, the experience is so different, but I absolutely love the pace of it too. We were talking about this earlier, James, where the game is so slow because it's like a detective mystery. You're working out the case. You are quite literally piecing together the puzzle manually, but the pace of, like, I don't want to spoil it too much, but for instance, there's this part where you're in New York, or like a fucked up version of New York, and like walking around the streets. Every other game that you'll play that sets place in a big city, you're going to be sprinting around like a maniac. You could, I don't know, the atmosphere, the visuals, the fucking terror of it all.
Everything's just like really intriguing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like, you're walking around a corner and you see stuff, you think, oh, what's down there? What's down there? And it's strange because I don't really like horror games. I don't play many horror games. I'm quite like, that's just not a genre of games that I really explore that much. But I don't know, like, where Alan Wake 2 sort of sits on the scale of scary games. I'm guessing it's not that scary for hardcore sort of horror enthusiasts. But even for me, like, I don't really find it that scary. Like, I'm really enticed by just the atmosphere of the game and the setting and the vibe of it all. And yeah, there's jump scares, and like, the game got me real fucking good earlier. And yeah, but it's just like, I like it though. It's exciting, and for the first time ever playing a horror game, I actually want to be scared. I want to sort of like dive into this world and experience it all, because it's so rewarding as you're unfolding this story and this mystery and like working through the case and figuring out what's going on. The scares, yeah, obviously you get scared or whatever, it's fine, but because the story itself is so immersive and so kind of engrossing, it's like that's just a thing that you kind of like accept along the way, because it's just what the story is trying to tell.
Yeah, it's very mysterious. It's very like, even though you know the horrors that are there, it's, I don't know, it just catches you out. And I just can't say the graphics are phenomenal.
Yes, it's insane. It's ridiculous,
isn't it? It's one of the most gorgeous games I've ever played.
It's like the closest thing to real life in terms of kind of like how a game can look, I think, that we could get. And it's a huge step up from anything we've seen so far. I mean, even games like Red Dead Redemption 2, obviously, which is regularly lauded for its kind of visual striking image. This game, I'm not saying it shits on Red Dead, but it just takes everything that is good about a game like Red Dead Redemption 2 and elevates it all to a new level with the certain, technologies and stuff they use, like ray tracing, like the photorealistic graphics and stuff. It's just insane the way they've kind of managed to make it all work. I was watching a Digital Foundry video about Alan Wake, and they were saying that they've kind of baked in to the game these settings within like the settings menus for the graphics and the fidelity that would be optional or would be on the sort of medium to higher end scale of a graphic setting previously. They're baked into the game just like by default. So even if you're playing the game on low settings, for example, on PC, which is the equivalent of what it would be on the console, you're still getting like an incredibly realistic image, even though it's technically low on PC. So that's kind of like the level at which they're stepping it up into a new kind of generation of graphical fidelity.
Interesting, isn't it? A marvel what the Unreal Engine can do. It's just phenomenal.
It's their own engine. No, it's the Northlight engine.
Oh, really?
It's their own engine.
Oh, I was under the assumption it was the Unreal Engine because the first game was on the Unreal Engine, I think.
Yeah, so
they built.
I don't know about Quantum Break, but they built Control and Alan Wake 2 on the Northlight engine, which is Remedy's own in-house game engine.
Alan Wake 1 was on the Havoc engine. I'm fucking uninformed.
Yeah. Anyway, we've been ignoring Connor for like 10 minutes, so I just want to bring you in if you want to. Do you want to join in the Alan Wake discussion? What do you think of the game? I know you haven't really played it much, but are you planning to play it?
Yeah, I've had to stop myself buying Alan Wake 2 and Spider-Man 2 last week. Like, they've both been in like a basket, and I'm like,
yeah.
So no, I'm gonna play both of them. Yeah, Alan Wake 2. I didn't like the first one. I didn't get on with it. Like, just from a control, I liked where it was set. I liked the tone. I like everything about it, but it just felt clunky when I played it, and I had played it way later than it came out, so it came out on like the DualShock 2 or 3, like on the PS3, that sort of era, but I played so many games. So yeah, it felt aged when I played it, so it didn't really do the game credit. But yeah, I'm probably going to end up buying it on payday.
Highly recommend.
And, and it rounds off, like, unless anything else comes out of the woodwork, it seems like it's the final massive game that comes out this year, which has just been hit after hit after hit.
Yeah. I mean, there was one point,
year, isn't it?
It has been a really good year. There was one point in the year when we're kind of looking ahead at all these games and thinking, well, if half these games manage to come out this year, it'll be a great year for games, because obviously we've had so many delays lately, and it feels like this is the year where developers in particular have caught up with the delays from COVID, and these games are just being pumped out one after another. And like this month alone, October, Spider-Man 2 and Alan Wake 2, two huge games that released literally within a week of each other, or maybe 2 weeks of each other. Obviously, we had City Skyline 2, which came out recently. That's a game that people have been talking about a lot. Maybe not necessarily for good, but
it shows how well the industry's...
Forza as well. I forgot about Forza this month.
Forza came out. Starfield did massive numbers, which is pretty much give Xbox record-breaking Q1 in the in their history. Spider-Man 2 is the fastest-selling PlayStation game of all time.
Yeah, incredible. We've still got Call of Duty.
The games
on the
are back.
Call of Duty.
God.
Yeah,
fuck off.
That'll break records.
It's going to do gangbusters, isn't it?
That'll break refund records.
Yeah, so. We've had was Cyberpunk DLC? Was that this month?
Cyberpunk,
yeah, that was August as well.
Redemption story.
It's been a pretty. Oh, mate, the finals. I'm so glad you mentioned that, actually, Ben, because we've been playing a lot of the finals. This beta that's been out, this public beta, cross-play beta, whatever you want to call it, come out a few days ago, and it lasts through to the 5th of November. But I think by the time this comes out, it'll be finished.
Yeah.
But the finals, we've mentioned the finals before in this podcast, and it is a incredible first-person, squad-based, objective-based shooter, almost like a battle royale in some instances, but having lots and lots of fun on that. And that game, I was invited to the very first play test of that game literally a couple of years ago. Hot garbage. Then another play test, really, really positive. Another one, step back. So but this one, so good. Like, they've polished the game entirely. I'd be surprised if this game doesn't come out within the next 6 months, because it's looking like it's basically finished. It runs really well and plays really nicely.
That's it. I mean, I suppose for them, this is maybe a confirmation of what they've done with the engine and the way the game feels and plays. That's almost like they've done that. I'm feeling that this is more of now just like a server stress test, testing out the crossplay. Yeah, because why else would you test that unless you were close to release? Because obviously you want that game to launch. You don't want people to be queuing up. You don't want servers to be dropping. You want the game to be ready to go. And the performance is a big tick. And now it's
performance
just,
increase is nuts, because I'm playing the game at like max settings with ray tracing on, maxing 4K. Out the frame rates on my screen. It's like incredible how far it's come in that regard. And
a game with that pace and a game of that fucking hectic mental madness.
Yeah.
Buildings destroying, the particle effects, the fucking, I don't know, the speed that your character moves at and the enemies move at. I don't know, it's just nuts.
It's the best first-person shooter I've played in probably a decade.
I cannot wait.
Yeah, if anyone's kind of like listening to this, not really sure what the finals is, put it this way, we are, I guess you could call us 3 very disgruntled Call of Duty players looking for another shooter that we can squad up and play together. And the finals is made by a new studio that comprises of ex-DICE developers, people with real good pedigree. I think there's some Call of Duty devs in there as well, possibly. But the game is basically a team v team v team v team in some of the game modes. Extraction shooter, more or less. Like you go in, grab the cash, get out, and defend your winnings. You fight other teams, and then you go through to rounds. But lots of destruction, variety of gadgets, different play styles, very team orientated.
Yeah.
And if you're put off by Battlefield 2042 and sort of state of Call of Duty at the moment, look for something new. Keep an eye on the finals. Definitely worth looking at.
Yeah, they're short, fast-paced, team-based objective shooter. It's great.
That's it.
Yeah, real good. Yeah. Well, before we move on to the main topic, anyone else got anything they want to add for our general discussion for this little intro?
I gave you mentioned City Skylines 2. I gave that a go just to sort of stay informed, and I was absolutely gobsmacked when I launched it and hit maximum of 30 frames per second.
But is that because of performance, or is the game actually limited to 30 frames per second?
Well, I have got it above 30 frames now, and it's definitely not capped. It's just, I don't know, it's just unoptimized. And I'm not too quick to hate on a game because of performance reasons. Many people will go and shit on a game, give it terrible reviews for performance reasons. Inevitably, always performance problems get fixed in a matter of time. It's just one of those shit things that a game gets released maybe a little bit too early or a little bit too unoptimized. And you know it will get fixed, so you can't judge it too quickly. I mean, you can and you can't. But besides, there's another reason why I think City Skylines doesn't quite hit the mark. So obviously City Skylines 1 has maybe had over 10 plus years of content and updates and just a whole life cycle. But now City Skylines 2 has come out, and one would assume that the next one will have everything the first game's got and more, something that will set it apart and take it to the next level. But unfortunately, City Skylines 2 has just got, I don't know, less than what the first game provides, and I don't know, just doesn't do it as well. It's the game doesn't seem very smart when you place things, and there's a slight gap. It's really fucking ugly, and I don't know. The game's just like, and it's really janky too. I don't know. I feel like it's gonna have another 10 years of work on it, and probably in a year
announced like 8 new regions or something coming out. But I think they aimed for 30 frames a second, which doesn't make real sense for a game that's where your city's getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and you're going to have to be moving around, placing things, and 30 frames is just going to limit that. It's going to be a little bit jagged, a little bit rough.
I mean, I can see
30 frames is so fucking 2001.
Yeah, but I can. Now, I'm a PC player, so don't hate on me for saying this, but I can see why they would, I guess, aim for 30 frames per second in some aspects, because at the end of the day, it's a non-competitive title. It doesn't need to rely on like rich kind of visual fidelity, and maybe for the sake of like resourcing and channeling, CPU resourcing, for example, to different locations within the game, so that you could get more into the game. Don't know if that makes sense. Maybe they'll think, oh fuck it, we'll just aim for 30 FPS, because no one's going to be needing 60 FPS or higher on this game. Even though, especially us being on PC, we expect everything. Like even Alan Wake, for example. Alan Wake, there's been a lot of talk about Alan Wake 2 being an incredibly demanding game that will suck resources from your PC and set it on fire if it's not fucking powerful enough. And I accept that. Even still, I can still run this game at a 4K and achieve 60 FPS on my PC. Like even still. So, there's, I don't know what goes into that decision to say we're going to run this game or aim for 30 FPS on this game. It's a real weird one.
Yeah, I mean, I think you hit it there with the whole Alan Wake thing, because that was my comparison. I was comparing my performance I was getting on Alan Wake 2, one of the most gorgeous games I've ever played, and demanding, and hitting really good frames on max settings, then to jump on City Skylines 2 that doesn't even come close graphically, and then I'm hitting 30, and it's just like there's no reason for that. Like, I don't know. It's fine. It is what it is. It's a city building game. It's not exactly fast.
Yeah. Hopefully, like you say, Connor, hopefully over the next few years they can build it, because this is obviously going to be a game that's going to be around for another decade as well, like the first one.
It's Paradox, isn't it? Yeah, they'll continue to update the game. It's just it's a shame that it's come out in the state it has, because I think a lot of people were looking forward to City Skylines 2. I remember when we saw the trailer at the Xbox showcase.
Yeah, I was thinking that looks really good. I thought it looked
great, and I haven't played too much of the first one, but I enjoyed what I played, and I thought, they're going to expand it. There's going to be more to do, but I'll check that game out in 6 months. It'll probably be great. So
yeah. I've got faith in Paradox. They've done a lot of good in the past.
All right, well, should we move on to the main event?
Let's.
Well, just to explain what the Hall of Fame is, for anyone who hasn't listened to our previous Hall of Fame episode, it's basically our greatest games of all time list. a list we've been slowly adding to over the course of this show, and we'll keep adding to, I guess, until we think it's complete or we just get bored. We've talked a lot about what makes a great game truly great, or really one of the greatest of all times, and the reasons for calling a game the best of all time will obviously vary from player to player. But I think for us, that game will need to have contributed to or changed the industry in some positive way, excelled far beyond anything else in that genre in terms of its execution, perhaps made us rethink our expectations of video games, and generally elevated the medium to new heights. So far, we've added Metal Gear Solid 2 Sons of Liberty for its thought-provoking examination of society in the digital age, and Red Dead Redemption 2 for creating one of the most immersive video game worlds of all time.
Yeah.
And I think, or we think, our next game deservedly sits side by side with our first two entries for its own reasons, and that game is The Witcher 3. Cue The Witcher 3 soundtrack. So The Witcher 3.
All of the games are sequels. We've never put an original product into the Hall of Fame.
Oh,
yeah, but I mean, that's just the way it is. You know, if the game's good, then the game's good. Sometimes the first version of a game can have potential, but not quite hit it. And I feel like that was maybe what Red Dead Redemption was. Not saying it didn't quite hit it. It was a very good game, but Red Dead 2 took everything that was great about Red Dead and just fucking pushed it into the stratosphere, you know?
Technology of the time and stuff
with
as well.
GTA Online money pumped into it.
Still pumping.
Right. Yeah. So, The Witcher 3. Witcher 3 is an action role-playing game developed by Polish studio CD Projekt Red, and it's based on the best-selling novels by Polish author Andrzej Sapkowski. I just got really thrown off by my own notes there because for some reason I wrote German author, but I know he's Polish.
Yeah, he is Polish.
I don't know why I wrote that. The game is widely regarded as one of the greatest open-world games ever created, and at the time of its launch received rave reviews from fans and critics. To date, The Witcher 3 is one of the best-selling video games of all time, having sold over 50 million copies, and I didn't know that until earlier. That's a lot of copies sold since its release in 2015. With thousands of players still spending countless hours in its world, it's safe to say that the impact of The Witcher 3 in video games is clear for everyone to see. So, lads, we've chosen The Witcher 3 as the next game into the Hall of Fame. But what is it about the game that makes it so special?
It's one of those easy choices, isn't it? It's like a decision that's almost been made for us. If you make a game that good, that's made that much of an impact, that hit the hype when it was being teased, and I don't know, excelled everyone's expectations, I don't know, it's just a no-brainer. I think everything from the incredible story to the iconic characters and voice actors, the gameplay was great, the graphics were absolutely next gen of the time, and I mean, I struggled to complete The Witcher 3 for my own personal reasons because I've just got a terrible attention span, but I eventually made my way through it for the first time this year. Was it this year? I think it was. And oh my God, why the fuck did I wait so long? What an incredible story.
17th attempt.
I've
done
to be honest though, Ben, you probably played the best version of the game.
Yeah, I
with
really
the next
did.
gen update, with the RTX editions and stuff like that, all ray tracing and everything. So you probably played the best version of it.
Yeah, I actually do feel quite fortunate that I did wait until, well, I say I didn't intentionally wait, but since I didn't complete it for so long until the next gen version came out, it was an amazing first time experience because it was obviously everything that they might have fixed and tweaked from the first one, and then everything else that they
DLCs available to you at the time as well.
Yeah,
and like me and James, we were sitting there waiting, like staring at the ceiling, like I need this expansion.
Come on. Yeah. Well, actually, I'm just going to try and cast your minds back because I'm not sure if you remember this, but I actually do remember this when it happened. So the E3 2013, the Witcher 3 debut of the gameplay trailer hits our screens, and it looks very different from what we got, which is interesting because I'm looking back at it and thinking that's not what the game looked like when I played it on the PS4 in 2015 when it came out, because it didn't come to PC straight away. It came to console first, and then I think PC later on. Is that right, Colin? Do you remember?
Yeah, I think sounds right, because there was an uproar about it. Because obviously the second one had come to console. It's only on the 360. The first one was a PC exclusive. So.
Yeah. So interesting because I remember going back even before that to, is it the Watch Dogs announcement for the PS4, which we would have been going into the PS4 and Xbox One generation then, and then that was kind of like a massive fucking downgrade from what was shown at E3.
Yeah.
Obviously, when the game came out, people were clearly like very satisfied with what they got. But I think it's interesting that they showed the game in 2013, and it kind of looks completely different from what we actually got 2 years later when the game released.
What, in like an overpromised kind of way?
Yeah, massively overpromised. The game looks like so different. If you go back and watch that E3 gameplay trailer for 2013, it looks really different. There's like way more kind of weather effects in the game. There's way more sort of like the combat looks. I know you mentioned the combat, Ben, but I don't know if you didn't play it back on the PS4 when it came out. The combat wasn't great, and they massively improved that as the sort of like game kind of lived out its life cycle. So yeah, they overpromised in that first trailer.
Yeah,
I think it's interesting how they managed to kind of release the game and it still be incredible, even though they kind of they weren't really truthful with what the game was going to be when they first kind of showed it off, which is a weird and interesting sort of point to take, because everyone kind of forgets about that, because we're all in like this heightened state of, oh my god, I love The Witcher now, but back then it was like a bit of a.
I think it's one of those things where even though they may have technically overpromised, maybe because of the bare bones of the game was so good anyway, that it wasn't like it was almost like they promised what us here and then we received this, but usually we would have got this. Like what we got with like the Watch Dogs, if you know what I mean.
Like you said with the Watch Dogs, and I remember as well, like graphically around that time, the Division was shown off, and then we got, obviously people love the Division, but that era of gaming was, this is what you're getting, and then you got something completely different, and then they go, well, the consoles held it back, and we can't do this. And so I do think The Witcher 3 obviously came out, rave reviews, understandably, but they were trying to get those games onto like the Xbox One and the PS4 at the time.
Yeah. So I remember I got the 2080 Ti specifically to play The Witcher 3 on like.
And you
max
never played
settings.
it.
And then you didn't play it until you got your 4090.
Yeah, exactly.
2 generations and like 5 years later or something.
Yeah. But I remember I couldn't run it at like on, I don't know, high enough settings. So The Witcher was the exact reason why I upgraded my computer immensely at the time.
Yeah.
But
well, it's funny because sorry, no, but gone.
I was just going to say I was going to move on to the open world, but
yeah, well, that's sort of funny you say that. That's literally what I was going to mention next. So you said about them having like a real kind of core, just like great experience in the game, and that's why when it looked like it had been downgraded, the experience itself was still incredible.
Yeah,
and I think that one of the best kind of experiences you can have in this game, or one of the best things you can do in this game, is just explore the open world, because
me too.
We kind of talk about like open world games and how some open world games like Assassin's Creed get it really wrong. Some open world games like The Legend of Zelda, Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom, and then obviously The Witcher, Red Dead Redemption 2 get it really right. Yeah. What is it that they do differently? Well, with The Witcher, much like Red Dead Redemption 2, the world just feels like things you do in that world mean something, first of all. Secondly, characters fleshed out. Thirdly, there's so much detail. And a combination of these things has made the world of The Witcher 3 just such a delight to travel through and be in.
Well, there's this sort of, not study, I don't want to go as far as to say it to like that, but there's basically this like golden distance between objectives and like points of interest that game developers kind of did some research into in the past. And a game like The Witcher has basically got this like, I don't know, between each point of interest and side mission and sort of I don't know, you know what I mean, points of interest.
Yeah.
There should be a certain amount of travel time between them, and I think The Witcher hit the fucking golden distance between objectives. So you could there was always a little bit of distance between where you currently are and something of interest, but it was always like a chain link. You could jump from one to the other so there was always some interest. There's no extra long distance without something of interest. It's not like it's too much on top of each other. It kind of hits that perfect attention span level of a player, regardless of the player. If you are someone who really takes your time and immerses yourself in the world, or someone who doesn't really care and is just trying to like speed through the game, for everybody they kind of hit this nail on the head in regards to just having lots of interest. And just
no matter where you go, like you can be riding through the countryside and there'll be what was a battlefield, like what feels like a couple of days ago, and there's rotting corpses and there's drowners popping up out of them, and there's people in cages, people on spikes. Or you'll go through Velen and it feels crowded, it feels crammed. You've got like the Eternal Fire spouting off propaganda, people getting burnt alive. And you'll see people walk around, some people are holding their back, you got little bits of dialogue going off as you go past. It just feels lived in, and I hadn't really played a game like it up until then. Like obviously we had big games like Skyrim and stuff like that, but there's long periods of time where you just walking around, there's nothing going on. Where it's same with like you brought up Red Dead 2, like they've made the world feel lived in, but it's not overpacked. You can go through the countryside and not see anyone for ages. There'll be some monsters and stuff like that, so it feels real. And it's just fantastic.
It's just the atmosphere of the world, isn't it? You really do get transported to that world.
The soundtrack changing in the background as you're just riding around and you're walking through.
And then like the dynamic of Geralt, like Geralt isn't loved or adored. He's a fucking monster, and he gets spat at and he gets abused verbally, and
gets called a witch fucker when you're walking around the town.
Witch
fucker.
But like Geralt, such a cool, iconic, one of the most iconic characters of all time, and he's really just this tough mofo. Doesn't give a fuck. Like he knows he can slay every single person in every single town he goes to, but he's just the most iconic character.
I don't know how they've done it, because a character completely devoid of emotion. That's what happens to him during like the trials.
And it's like a game where you have so many decisions to make.
And he's meant to be impartial, but you still you care about it. It's weird because he shows no emotion, but he still looks to do the right thing.
It's just interesting, isn't it? Where you have a game where you have so many decisions that you can make that actually really have a profound effect on the whole overarching story of the game. But then the character that you play as doesn't really give a fuck, and doesn't need to either. They're completely self-sustaining, like witches.
It's a sword for hire.
It's
a weird like situation to be in when you're kind of playing as Geralt, because you really do end up making decisions that impact so many people who live on the continent. And one of my favorite parts of the game, and many people will always like refer to the Bloody Baron storyline and everything that goes on with him. It's just like that's when you really kind of begin to understand the effect that your actions can have in the game. And I feel like, sort of going back onto what you said, Connor, I feel like The Witcher 3 is the first real big AAA open world game where your decisions really counted, where they really mattered. Now, I know like Skyrim had an element of that as well, but I never really played Skyrim, so I can't speak on that in my own personal sort of opinion. But for me, The Witcher feels like it was the first time that was ever really put into a game and really thought about in like how we can change the actual outcome of the entire game, because there are multiple endings to the game. There's multiple ways you can get there. 36
in total, like different decisions, like does Radovid take charge, did Nilfgaard take charge, and stuff like that in total.
So you're literally going through the game and you're shaping the fate of the continent. And it's interesting that is such a big part of the game, because the whole kind of theme around the game is about fate and like, you know, Ciri's kind of calling and like the elder blood and all this stuff. And it's like, well, what does she want to do, even though she's got all these kind of like, you know, that the fate of the entire world rests on her shoulders and stuff, but she just wants to be a witcher and hang out with Geralt, and she doesn't care about any of that stuff. And like, you have a direct impact on whether she gets to do that or not.
Like, and the story really ramps up So when you get towards the end and you are really sort of invested in Ciri and you're with her and you are making those decisions, it's incredible when the story and the excitement of the story matches that. I remember getting towards the end and the shit is going down in that crazy storm. And that's the definition of an amazing game. It's thrilling, exciting.
Yeah. And then you've obviously, if you don't go out and do the side missions or you just power through the main story, you don't necessarily get the best team for the battle that care more. You can find people that are off the beaten track. You've got Geralt sort of being torn between Triss, who he had a fling with whilst he had amnesia in the second game, and Yennefer, who's the one that he's been sort of partnered up with for life. Like they're meant to be together. It's
Can you imagine the skill and dedication it takes to craft a story that has so many different options available to the player and make it also cohesive and make sense? And it's just what a feat. Like, imagine the fucking mind map on a wall that they would have had with all the narratives and where they lead and what affects what and the timings of it all and what if you do this quest before another quest, and then it's just amazing to think.
On top of that, you've got a ginormous fucking map with different sections, and you've got all of these points of interest. You've got these side quests, and these just throwaway missions that are just as well written as the main quests are.
Yeah. That was one of the biggest praises the game got, wasn't it? That the side quests weren't just your typical go here, kill this, come back. It was actual interesting stories. Yeah.
Well, that's just like the side quests, if anything, they're just a precursor to what the DLC has in store, because we've said this from the beginning, and many other people have said this as well, is that the expansions, particularly Blood and Wine, has got more content in it and is more content complete than so many games that claim to be finished and inexperienced or whatever when they come out. And it's just a fucking DLC at the end of the day, just an expansion. But it's a 20 to 30 hour expansion. Like, who does that? Who the fuck makes that on top of a 200 plus hour game already?
If CD Projekt Red had gone right, we've got Blood and Wine coming out. It's like a 3.5. It's a separate game to The Witcher 3. I would have paid full price for it.
Yeah, because they didn't just add new story stuff onto the game. They added a whole new map. They added all these new mutations and things like that, and like a new skill tree and all these other things, loads of new armor, loads of new weapons and swords and stuff. So it really was like The Witcher 3.5.
Yeah.
And completely sort of changed the game in a bunch of positive ways. And that whole storyline in Blood and Wine is really good as well, really interesting. I mean, just as good as any of the side quests or main quests that you get in the main game.
I think it's one of those things where it's like, it is actually kind of the definition of what downloadable content is, but then it also pushes the boat out for what downloadable content should be, because it's way more than what other game devs provide for their games with DLC, and it's way more than what you'd expect from just a DLC. It's actual content. So amazing.
One thing I loved is at the beginning of Hearts of Stone, the random guy that you meet in the tavern in like the tutorial, the tutorial section of the game, is the enemy in the DLC, and it's Gauntro Dim, I think his name is. He's the Man of Mirrors, but it's like you go to the game and you go, I know that guy, and then it hits you. Oh, he was in the tutorial at the beginning of the game, and it's just like, did they plan that from the beginning, or did they throw that in?
That's it.
It's the attention to detail, because it could have just been some random guy, he's just turned up out of nowhere. But it's like, no, that guy's already in the game, and he knows everything about you, because he talks about lilac and gooseberries and like Yennefer and stuff like that. He knew everything about Geralt.
Just immediate interest, isn't it? Yeah. Also, as well, they invented a whole fucking Gwent system to go along with the game.
Oh, mate, the amount of hours I spent on Gwent within the game is just ridiculous. It's so good. Yeah. And also, I just want to say, Horizon Forbidden West, you tried to fucking rip off Gwent with your own in-game stupid fucking board game. And not Forbidden West, what's the new one? No, it's Forbidden West.
Yeah, it's Forbidden West.
Yeah, with your own fucking board, and it sucks.
Oh no,
it's happened in so many games since. Obviously, Final Fantasy did it long before a lot of people, but I've noticed since The Witcher came out, there'll be like little side games in games, and they're not as good.
Yeah, usually they're boring. You just want to skip them.
Mate.
You've got no interest.
You know, they fucking setting trends all over the place. CD Projekt.
I would purposely go around and find a new merchant to play Gwent against someone I've never played before.
Yeah, like, definitely, absolutely. That was like a whole thing that I went through for like literally probably about 10 to 15 hours of the game, was just playing Gwent solidly, not doing anything else. Once I played a few matches, I was like, yeah, this is sick. So now I'm just going to carry on playing it.
Yeah. And then I remember I was cheesed the fuck out of that mission where you had to win that high stakes tournament. I made sure I won that because obviously, if you I looked it up. If you lost that, you wouldn't be able to get all the cards in the game. Like you had to win it.
Yeah.
So I cheesed the shit out of that.
That's like it just shows how much kind of attention to detail they've brought in, and you know I think about the process of making The Witcher 3 and expanding this world and building it out with the characters and everything, and I mean, I don't know what that took. It obviously took a fucking Herculean effort to get the game to where it is now, because they have literally looked after every aspect of the game, even like all the side characters and NPCs. They feel like they've all had some kind of love and attention put into them, which is what, you know, you play a lot of games these days, and Assassin's Creed Valhalla is a prime example. It's like that game has been fucking neglected, and it was neglected when it was being fucking made as well.
And like CD Projekt Red were a smallish studio at the time. They're in the middle of Poland. Polish gamers don't buy games. That's the culture of the country. Obviously, The Witcher 2, The Witcher 1 and The Witcher 2 had like cult followings, and they tried to expand when The Witcher 2 went on to Xbox 360, and obviously the books were popular. And then The Witcher 3 comes out, and it's just like a tornado of momentum. Everyone knows about CD Projekt Red. They're clearly on the map. Then they announced Cyberpunk. They're arguably the most revered studio in the world after one game.
Yeah. And then obviously now, coming up next, we've got The Witcher 1 remake. I mean, I'm not sure when that's due to come out, but the Witcher 1
supposedly
came out.
a top to bottom remake, isn't it? Entire game's being remade. That
I hope
should be
take
quite cool.
Time.
Well, it's not being made by CD Projekt Red. They're like overseeing it.
They've scrapped what was already being made.
Did they?
Yeah. Okay. Something, I don't know if they're bringing it in-house. There was rumours that they'd scrapped it. They weren't happy with it or something like that. But,
I did hear that they were bringing in the actual devs of The Witcher 1 in to like oversee it as well.
Yeah.
I just hope they take as much time as they want, because obviously the shareholders forced out Cyberpunk and it didn't come out in the state that it's come out.
I think so many devs learnt a lesson from that. I mean,
did they?
I say that.
It's still happening today.
Yeah, it's still happening.
I think CD Projekt Red learned from that.
Yeah.
And
it's a big lesson to learn.
And I just can't get over how good The Witcher 3 is. And now where Cyberpunk is, like, this new expansion's come out, which I'm going to play in January. But just, if you look at Cyberpunk now and The Witcher 3 now as well, they've updated that game 8 years later. You know, they're constantly adding things. It's been patched 4 times this year.
Yeah. And I mean, you kind of touched on it a little bit a minute ago, Connor, but I kind of wanted to maybe just sort of wrap up the discussion about The Witcher, just mentioning the studio again, CD Projekt Red, and kind of the impact that they've had on gaming, but more than that, because we know now that obviously there's a Netflix series of The Witcher, there's the anime, The Witcher 4 is in development, or like a new version of The Witcher is in development at some point. So I think for not just the, like I mentioned in my intro to this section that, you know, for us, a game that gets into the Hall of Fame, a game to be regarded as one of the best of all time, should have some kind of cultural impact, I think. Just like Red Dead Redemption 2 did, just like Metal Gear Solid 2 did. And, you know, The Witcher, especially when you look at the kind of impact that it had commercially, just in the genre itself, like, you know, the action RPG, and also just video games generally. And like we said about spawning off like fucking side games and imitations of Gwent and stuff like that. Like, for me, CD Projekt Red, they had their problems with Cyberpunk, but they are one of the best video game studios in operating today.
the care and attention is on another level.
There's,
you don't get many games like that.
If anyone's listening to this, obviously after the episode, Danny O'Dwyer over on No Clip's got like a documentary over at CD Projekt Red, and you see them just making like taverns and placing huts in little areas, and it's just tiny little details that you take for granted in this game. You'll walk into it, and obviously you're in a town, and there's 15 huts or whatever. They're all different inside. They may not seem it, but there's candles in different places, and there's bookshelves, and all the little points of interest. They didn't need to do that. Like you.
Well, that's what sets them apart, though, isn't it? It's that level of attention to detail. I mean, we just come off the back of another massive Western RPG in Starfield, and Starfield is a hugely ambitious game. And you know, any sensible gamer looks at that game and think, "Yeah, I know what Bethesda are trying to do with this game," but that still does not excuse or kind of negate the fact that you can go to some of these planets and there's a lot of repetitive content on some of these planets. Put it down to the procedurally generated aspect of it or whatever you want to do, that's fine, but I would rather have a world like The Witcher where everything's been handcrafted and everything's been placed by creators and artists in there to tell a story in a specific way and not just kind of been copy and pasted, or is not like the kind of offspring of a semi-functional, procedurally generated sort of system.
I mean, there's a massive contrast between the two, isn't there? I mean, one of them is, like you said, that care and attention that a developer would put in, and it's mostly because of like story-driven reasons. Whereas with the procedural generation, it's more of just like I don't know, it's almost like an indie dev strategy, isn't it? Where they haven't got the team available to make it man-made, so let's use a bit of AI to assist and help.
This game really does feel like a love letter to the fans of The Witcher. Obviously, I jumped in. I've completed the third one. I played a little bit of the second one. I couldn't play the first. I didn't have a PC at the time, but it feels like this is Geralt's send-off. We're going to do it right, and everything they've done, everything right. Everything's where it's meant to be. The writing is stellar, the voice acting is great. And there's times where you will be in a town and you recognise the voice actor because he was in the town prior, but the dialogue changes and it doesn't take you out of it. And the score is incredible.
I've got a little bit of random trivia.
Go on.
So what's the first town you start the game in, the small one?
White Orchard.
Yeah. So there's a little kid who says like, "Oh, I got a lump of bread today." And my daughter, sometimes when she says things a certain way, I try and get her to this day to say, "Oh, I got a lump of bread today," because she sounds all common English, like just like the kid does. I don't know why, but
like fucking Oliver Twist.
Yeah,
I've got a lump of bread today.
Yeah, literally.
I was walking around and it pops into my head all the time, but there's one thing you walk past and he goes pam param.
Yeah,
pam.
Oh, that guy. Yeah,
and that pops into my head to this day.
Yeah,
crazy. But I mean, it takes a fucking game like that to give you those moments. So not all games can deliver that for you.
No, especially when it comes out in 2015. Think about the limitations of the time. Just that's
what I mean. Like Connor and I, we talk about this a lot. We spent 200, maybe 300 hours playing The Witcher 3 on the PS4 at 14 FPS.
Sounded,
but I loved every minute of it, and that's just how good the game is, And I definitely feel a little bit envious of you actually, Ben, because you playing it in 2023, you played the absolute best version. And I guess if you went back to 2015 and said this is what your game will look like in sort of 8 years' time, they'll be like, that's exactly the game we wanted to make.
Yeah, I think. Well, yeah, you're right for sure.
Yeah. But yeah. Anything else to add before we officially
what after your first playthrough, what ending did you get? How did Ciri come out of it?
Do you want to go first?
So I think I got the good ending where Ciri becomes a Witcher.
Yeah.
So I was really pleased with that, because when I looked it up after to see what other endings I could have got, and then that it was kind of widely adopted or widely agreed upon that the Ciri Witcher ending was like the ultimate best one.
That's like the canon ending.
Oh, thank fuck for that. Yeah.
Yeah, I got that ending as well.
Yeah, that's the ending I got. And me and James playing at a time where we didn't know there was multiple endings.
Yeah. I knew there were multiple endings.
Didn't know. So lucky. Because as well, the lead up into getting that ending, you have to make the correct choice on like 5 different occasions or something throughout, not just like the end of the game, but it's literally the entire game. These go back to. You need to make the correct decision from like the beginning right to the end. Otherwise,
to the Baron and stuff.
Otherwise, you risk fucking it all up.
Otherwise, she can become like Empress or something.
Yeah,
she can die.
Well, the worst one is she goes into that fucking void and just doesn't come back, and then Geralt loses everyone, and then he goes to the fucking witches in the Ladies of the Woods. And I watched that because I was sorry, Connor, but I was just mentioning I was really interested to see the really bad ending, but I never got it myself, so I went back and watched it on YouTube, and it's proper shit. Geralt basically loses everyone, and then he goes to the Ladies of the, were they called the Ladies of the Woods or whatever they call those the crones, those 3 witches.
Yeah,
I think he's or something.
Yeah, the crones are Crookback Bog. I think I don't know if he's going there to kind of like to kill them or try to get them to do something to undo what he does, but he goes into the hut, the door closes. You hear the witches come out and it just cuts to black. So you don't know what happens to him, whether he dies, whether he kills them or what. I think people say that he dies in that hut because he goes there basically on a suicide mission because he's lost everyone.
Yeah, he goes back
to such a dark fucking ending.
He goes back to get Ciri's medallion and then he gets attacked by like everything in the forest apparently. But I like you said, I do think he's just gone back to die. That's why he's gone there. He's lost everything. And also, did you make a decision between Yennefer and Triss, or did you end up alone?
Yen
is canon. That's my head canon.
I picked Yen just because I think Triss was just a fling. I mean, I'd bang Triss IRL, not gonna
lie. Who wouldn't? But yeah, I feel like there are certain things about the game that like just are true. Like Geralt ends up with Yennefer, Ciri ends up being a Witcher. Like that, just for me, that's like the ultimate kind of canon of
that was that was the good ending.
And it's a nice little touch at the end of Blood and Wine. If like I think whoever you choose, they come and they stay with you in Tucson. I think that was
I thought that was such a good sort of cross.
Yeah, and you have the big picture at the end of everyone together. And
So I thought to myself, like, how does the Blood and Wine DLC tie in? Because you said that you'd settle down together, and then when you finish the DLC and Yennefer comes along and settles down together, it's like, oh, this is so perfect to end it.
Because they let you, it's so random in that DLC. They add so many more extra things into the game, like being able to fucking decorate your house, being able to even have a house, and like obviously all the mutation stuff.
DLC.
Exactly, like you said about like the Witcher being a love letter to fans and stuff, but Blood and Wine just feels like this is the developers now enjoying The Witcher and having fun with it and saying this is how everything's going to end. It's going to be all nice. This is how we leave it. So,
should we confirm and solidify this inclusion to our game?
Yes, absolutely. Yes. The Witcher 3, the 3rd entry in our Hall of Fame and very well deserving of that position. Not being 3rd, but just being in it generally.
No, it's number 1.
Well, that seems like a good place to leave it, lads. Thanks for the discussion on The Witcher 3. A game we all love, and a game sure many of you listening love as well. If you want to hear more from us, you can tap the link in the description of this episode. You can come join our Discord. You can watch us on YouTube and listen to us on all your favourite podcast streaming sites. Until next time, have a good week. See you soon.
Bye.
Bye.